everyone, and happy Friday. So, unfortunately, we're starting this episode on a somber note, and I'm sure that you've probably already heard the devastating news that 3 U.S. soldiers were killed and 40 injured in a drone strike by Iran-backed militia in Jordan, right outside the Syrian border. The Pentagon did release the names of the 3 soldiers: Sergeant William Jerome Rivers of Carrollton, Georgia, Specialist Kennedy Ladone Sanders of Waycross, Georgia, and Specialist Brianna Alexandria Moffett of Savannah, Georgia. So a few weeks ago, when Biden was asked about Iran, he mumbled, quote, "I've already delivered the message to Iran. They know not to do anything," end quote. And he slurred and mumbled this so badly, I couldn't even play the clip. So the exact opposite of a strong warning. And I'm sure you've heard the ridiculous and laughable threats from both Biden and Kamala to our adversaries that they made during an interview on 60 Minutes. And in case you missed that one, I have a clip that I'll play for you now.
I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran? Don't.
And what's the message to Iran?
Don't.
As President Biden said, just don't.
Exactly. One word. Pretty straightforward.
Vladimir Putin is becoming embarrassed and pushed into a corner. And I wonder, Mr. President, what you would say to him if he is considering using chemical or tactical nuclear weapons. Don't.
Don't. That's it.
You know why? You know why? Because they can't get him to string together a coherent stream of thought. So they kept it simple with a fucking one-word response.
Yeah, his staff's like, if you're asked about it, just say don't. Don't go any further. Just don't. Like, so ridiculous. The weakest threat a president has ever made. And guess what? They did, Biden. So now what? And, you think about it, like when Trump was president, he made it crystal clear what would happen if one hair was harmed on an American's head. And then, he would go and he would speak to the press daily. And now you have Biden just saying, don't, issuing these super vague, weak warnings, never speaking to the press, except when there's a helicopter in the background. Like this other clip that I'm about to play, where reporters asked him about Iran being responsible for the deaths of these soldiers. So listen to this.
I do hold responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it. I don't even think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That's not what I'm looking for.
So I don't know if you could hear that because there was a helicopter in the background, but that's what you get with this president. And when they asked about Iran being responsible for the deaths, he said, I think they're responsible in the sense that they provided the weapons for this attack. So he's just, absolutely ridiculous when it comes to standing up to our adversaries and letting the American people know what the hell is going on.
Yeah, it's like either he's boarding a plane and so he's walking away, like shuffling away mid-sentence, or there's noise in the background so he can they can legitimize the fact that he really can't hear. But I want to play this clip from fucking KJP. So the White House was asked, what their response was to the deaths of these 3 soldiers. And what she had to say was, quite frankly, fucking disgraceful. So I want to play this clip.
Our heartfelt condolences go out to the families who lost three folks who are military folks, who are brave, who are always fighting, who are fighting on behalf of this administration, of the American people. Obviously, more importantly, we lost those souls.
Wow.
3 folks who are brave, 3 folks, soldiers, like how disgraceful, like the way she couldn't even get the words out. I mean, it was so disturbing. And these poor families, like this administration does not give a fuck.
No, it's beyond embarrassing. Like you said, it's disgraceful, it's disrespectful. And how this woman has a job still is a mystery to me. Like, move on already. You freaking suck at your job. But that's awful how she responded. She should have had a long response, like prepped and ready to go. So absolutely ridiculous.
And mind you, too, that response was like, I think a day or two later. It wasn't even when it happened, probably because Biden was like asleep in a basement somewhere or on vacation. So they had nothing to say.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, what is Biden's plan, by the way? I don't know about you, Stephanie, but the last I read, there doesn't seem to be one because even though he's facing pressure to strike back at Iran, he's made it clear he doesn't want a war with the Middle East. And so far, he's given no response except just saying he's deciding on how to respond. And then obviously his don't message. I mean, this is a weak fucking president. But according to the Daily Mail, they're saying that the Biden administration is preparing a wave of strikes and cyber attacks that could last for weeks. And reportedly, officials told NBC News the potential targets would be Iranian commercial interests and proxy groups with forces in Iraq and Syria. So the article said that Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the response will be, quote, multi-leveled. And the White House has also described the response as, quote, tiered. So then on Wednesday, CNN reports that John Kirby, the fucking snarky White House Security Council spokesguy, he gave an equally vague statement about the Biden administration's plan, saying, quote, we will respond on our own time, on our own schedule. The first thing you see won't be the last thing, end quote. What the kind of
I
fucking...
feel like that's basically saying like they'll get to it when they feel like it. You know?
Yeah.
Like how awful.
As with everything this administration does, right? And then Kirby also said that the Biden administration believes the attack in Jordan was planned, resourced, and facilitated by an umbrella group called the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. And I guess this contains multiple groups, including Kataib and Hezbollah. So Pentagon spokesperson Major General Patrick Ryder told reporters on Tuesday that since this deadly attack that killed 3 soldiers on Sunday, there have been 3 other attacks on U.S. troops in the Middle East. And according to the Washington Examiner, militias in the Middle East have carried out approximately 165 attacks since mid-October of last year, and 120 American service members have been injured, including the 40 from Sunday's attack. And so what's the response from Iran going to be? Well, according to Fox News, Iran officials are warning that Tehran will respond decisively to any United States attacks. Reuters reported on Wednesday that the chief of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, Hassan Salami, he said, quote, we hear threats coming from American officials. We tell them they have already tested us, and so now we know one another. No threat will be left unanswered. We are not at war, but we are not after war, but we have no fear of war, end quote. And then a similar warning was given by Amir Saeed Iravani, who's Iran's ambassador to the UN in New York. And he said, quote, the Islamic Republic would respond to any attack on the country, its interests, and nationals under any pretext, end quote.
See, that's what happens when you show weakness and you take forever to respond. You then have the adversaries that take the lead and call the shots and show their strength. And every time I think about how much more can this man fuck things up in one term, he does. And I mean, he has a miraculous knack for screwing up our country in historical ways. And it's just like pushing us closer and closer to an all out war. I mean, I dread even looking at any headlines anymore.
Yeah. And on top of that, the Biden administration is funding Hamas. And I want to share this news article from Fox News. I think it was on Tuesday. They reported that the State Department, since October of 2023, the Biden administration has sent $121 million in taxpayer funds to an organization called UNRWA. It's the UN agency that's under scrutiny for its ties to Hamas. And then another $300,000 in appropriated funds was supposed to be delivered to UNRWA in the next few weeks, But Israel apparently provided the Biden admin with a new dossier containing information about 13 agency staffers who allegedly assisted or supported the Hamas terrorist attacks that occurred on October 7th. So, as a result of that, the White House announced last week that they're temporarily pausing remaining funding, but they're still defending UNRWA as being critical to providing humanitarian aid in Gaza. And a State Department spokesperson said the funding's likely going to resume by the summertime.
Yeah, and I remember Trump stopped that funding when he was president.
Yes.
I mean, it's just crazy. It's like we take care of every other country that hates us, by the way, and we leave nothing for the hardworking American taxpayers. Like it's the Democrat way. This is what happens.
Yeah, and it's that the thing is like everything that's happening all ties into what's happening at home in our southern border, right? These aren't just isolated attacks in Jordan. The attack on Israel was not an isolated attack. It's all tied to our border. And 10 former high-level FBI executives sent what they're referring to as an urgent letter to Congress in January. And they warned that all of these military-age males that are coming from hostile countries and pouring across the border, they're all creating an unprecedented risk to national security. And we've been saying this for what, a year now? Like this is clearly an issue. But I want to read part of a recent Fox News article where one of these former FBI officials was being interviewed. His name is Chris Swecker, and he was a special agent for 24 years. And he was talking about how the October 7th Hamas attack was basically designed to activate terrorist organizations and their followers throughout the world. And their goal is to expand this conflict globally. So he said, quote, "The terrorist goal is to extinguish Western civilization no matter how long or what it takes. Iranian surrogates, Hezbollah, and Hamas share that goal and have spent the last 40 years infiltrating and burrowing into the U.S., waiting for the order to activate an attack inside this country. To complicate this problem, it appears the Biden administration's efforts to focus on right-wing domestic extremists as the most significant terrorist threat has diverted our intelligence agencies from international terrorist gangs such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who have demonstrated their enduring commitment to destroy us. Consider the death and destruction that a small group of well-trained, well-equipped international terrorists can inflict. To infiltrate the U.S., they simply walk across the non-existent border or blend in with the thousands who cross illegally every day. Much like the ancient Romans, we have completely lost control of our borders. This led to the demise of Roman civilization. Border Patrol agents have been transformed from guardians of our southern front to Walmart greeters as they process the millions who abuse the system. The sheer numbers of unvetted illegal migrants from all over the globe provide cover for those from countries that are hostile and seek the demise of democracy and freedom. The sad fact is the Mayorkas-led Department of Homeland Security has turned itself into an $800 billion white elephant. The agency has no idea who's crossing our border, potentially nullifying all security measures that were taken in the aftermath of 9/11, end quote.
Yeah, well, and I just am thinking about what Iran's message was earlier, that they don't want a war, but they have no fear of war, probably because they have all of these groups set up ready to go on one word here in our country. And so you have Republicans on the House Homeland Security Committee that did vote to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. So I guess the vote is going to go to the House as early as next week. But I mean, is that actually going to do anything? Probably not. So we'll see how that goes. I feel like it's kind of pointless at this stage in the game, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's too little too late, even if he does get impeached. The damage has been done. We've allowed millions of unvetted illegal migrants and known terrorists into the country. And we're all going to end up paying the price for the throngs of misguided Americans and do-gooders who voted for the Biden admin because they didn't like Trump's mean tweets. So what is going on with the Biden-Texas border showdown? Because that all plays into this as well. And I am happy to say that the coalition of states that are supporting Texas and defending the border is now up to 27 from 25 that we reported on last week. Yeah, we've got Kansas and Kentucky joining the fight. So that's awesome. And I have to point out that It made my heart fill with joy and a total fuck yeah when I saw that the Texas Military Department is flying the Come and Take It Texas flag. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a white flag. It's got a black cannon on it. There's a star above the cannon. And then the words Come and Take It are written under the cannon. And it's also referred to as the Gonzales flag. And this is the flag of the Texas Revolution from back in the Battle of Gonzales in 1835. And it's like a symbol of defiance against Mexican dictatorship when the Mexican troops were trying to take back a cannon from some of the Texan secessionists. But the slogan, I guess, actually dates back to the American Revolution, but it is a well-known saying in Texas, and it's kind of become associated with Texas pride. And yes, I do have a shirt with it on there. But as a Texas resident, I love that the TMD flew this flag and they posted a picture of it on X. So thumbs up to you, TMD. And I also want to point out something else that may sound weird, but I was thinking about this a lot over the weekend. And quite honestly, we have to give thanks to blue cities like New York and Chicago for throwing their temper tantrums and crying about migrants being bused and flown to their cities. Because when it was just Texas and Arizona getting flooded with migrants the first couple years of the Biden administration, nobody gave a fuck until it started getting national media attention from blue cities whining and throwing fits. So in a very backhanded way, I say thank you, Mayor Adams.
They really are their own worst enemies, aren't they?
Yes.
But yeah, I thought about this the other day too, because I was like, if it wasn't for Abbott busing all of those migrants there, I don't think that we would have any progression towards closing the border. So it's like, he had the balls to send those buses, knowing there was going to be a huge backlash from the left and the media, which there was. But he stuck to it and he kept sending bus loads and it worked and it's still working. So good for him.
Yeah. And every time the Biden administration filed a lawsuit, he just went and tried some other angle. And I don't care if people call his actions political stunts, because if that's what it takes to get people to start paying attention to our border crisis, then I'm fine with that. And so, what is the status of the ongoing fight between Texas and Biden? Apparently, it's still up for debate in Congress. So on Tuesday, Biden claimed that he's done all he can do to secure the border. And he told reporters, quote, I asked them the very day I got into office, give me the border patrol, give me the judges, give me the people who can stop this. I can't even say that with a
Is that
straight
the same day that he stopped construction of the border wall?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, it's just, God, just listening to him makes me ill.
Know.
But I do have another KJP clip that I want to play, because Biden is being slammed by reporters for his statement last week. And I think we talked about this in another episode where he vowed to shut down the border if Congress will give him emergency authority. And so now there's all these questions of like, well, when Trump said he was going to shut down the border, you guys basically said he was racist. So I want to play what KJP had to say.
Look through and discuss, but right now we believe this is the best way forward. A bipartisan agreement is the way forward in dealing with this immigration system. A bipartisan agreement is what we need to deal with what's the challenges that we're seeing at the border. That's what we want to see. And that's what the Senate is working towards. Okay, Michael.
Back in the winter of 2018 and the spring of 2019, President Trump vowed to shut down the border with Mexico, using almost the identical language that the president used on Friday. Many, if not most, if not practically all Democrats called that xenophobic and even racist. Why shouldn't people make the same conclusion about this president's threat to shut down the entire border with Mexico?
So we believe the new enforcement tools that currently don't exist, that will be, we believe that will be part of this bipartisan agreement, will be fair. We believe it'll be tough, but it will be fair.
But he didn't say he wanted to use, excuse me, sorry.
No.
He didn't say, on day one, I will use enhanced enforcement to improve the processing of people at the border. He said, I will shut the border down, which suggests a total rejection of all people attempting to cross the border without a visa or without proper authorization, which stands in contravention to decades of international and U.S. law that governs the movement of people around the globe and the refugees and asylum system.
Yeah, no,
Why isn't that the same thing that Trump did?
No, I understand your question. What I'm saying to you, the new enforcement tools, right, that we believe that do not currently exist, that will be part of this bipartisan agreement. There are different definitions, right, of what that looks like, of what actually shutting down the border looks like, right? So we're going to let them work through it. We don't know what that looks like exactly, right? What we are asking for, what the president wants to see, is that we deal with the challenges at the border. Right, that we have an opportunity to deal with what's going on, the security, and make sure that we have the funding and the resources to deal with what we're seeing at the border.
There are different definitions, Stephanie. It's not the same.
That's her way of saying we're not going to do shit. When we say close the border, that really just means, we're going to get what we want.
Tools that haven't been invented yet.
She is like, I don't know who's worse to listen to, her or Biden. Like, they are two peas in a pod. Throw Kamala in there. Like, what a shit show.
The only reason I can play her clips and not Biden's is because you can at least hear what she's saying. Like,
yeah, true.
It's a total word salad usually, like Kamala, but at least she, pronounces words correctly. Whereas Biden, it's just like old man garble.
Yeah.
But as usual, she's conveying the message that the president is doing everything he can, which, as we know, is complete bullshit. And I have to give it to House Speaker Mike Johnson because he is holding the line so far in whatever dealings are going on with Congress. And I may have to take back that compliment depending on what kind of border security deal does end up being decided on. But so far, it seems like he's not backing down. And he responded to Biden's idiotic statements by saying, quote, "Here are just a few of the authorities at his disposal if only he would use them. Presidential authority to restrict entry, 212F. Expedited removal, 235B1. Discretionary detention authority, 236A. Mandatory detention, 236C. No more excuses," end quote. It's like you said on Monday, Stephanie, we don't need new laws. We just need to enforce the laws that are existing. And I don't know why it totally hit me after the fact when you made that comment. And it was like, we sit here and we keep discussing how do, we need to enforce the border. How are we going to enforce the border? And it's like, there are already laws on the books to enforce the border. We're just not fucking using them.
It was being done under Trump. The border was secure. They undid everything. Just put it back the way it was and we'll be good to go.
Yeah. And I also want to point out what National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd told to the Faulkner Focus on Tuesday. He was asked if he thought Biden was doing everything he could. And Judd said, quote, "Absolutely not. I'm sick of hearing all this rhetoric. He doesn't give evidence. The evidence is incontrovertible about what's going on right now. Secretary Mayorkas is complicit in allowing these individuals to violate our laws. Congress would be derelict if they did not hold him accountable. When you look at the total number of people that cross our borders illegally and have been released into the United States, the story that doesn't get told enough is what happens to these people that get released into the US. They are never leaving. ICE doesn't go after them. ICE doesn't report them," end quote. So you have the president of the National Border Patrol Council that Biden is saying, he's trying to, the Border Patrol can't do their job because Texas isn't letting them. And here's a very clear statement that Biden isn't doing a fucking thing to help the border.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how for the past 3 years they've said, oh, we have a closed border there, and they refused to say there was a crisis or anything. Now, at least they're admitting that there's a crisis, but even the Democrats, even the mainstream most left media is starting to turn on him. So I don't know if you caught it or not. It was hilarious. There was a clip of MSNBC leftist host Joy Reid, and she was caught on a hot mic on her show where the show was playing a clip of Biden blaming Congress for the border issue. And Joy Reid's mic was on and she said, quote, "He's going to start another fucking war." And right after that, she realized she said that live on air and she had to apologize for it, which is hilarious. So even the leftists like disagree with him on the border issue, but it also goes to show how the media are nothing but puppets and they read a script. Yet behind the scenes, they know it's all BS. And so like I don't know how any of them sleep at night. But some other news is that we just hit a new record. And that record is that more people illegally crossed our border in December than any month in history. Like, this is insane. And this included 19 individuals on the terror watch list just in December alone. And to put that in perspective, in 2021, there were 23 people in the entire year that were caught on the terror watch list. And now we've got 19 in 1 month.
Yeah, but that doesn't include the almost 900,000 known gotaways from 2023 alone. So who knows how many of them are actually on the terror watch list that got through and we don't know about it. Which, by the way, the terror watch list apparently isn't always accurate. There was a Daily Caller article this week about a Somali terrorist from the Shabab terror group that was caught at the California border and released into the interior of the United States last year because when the terrorist screening center ran his name through the terror watch list, they determined he was safe to travel freely through the country. And that's what he did until a couple weeks ago when his name was rerun through the database on January 18th, and they confirmed he was a Somali terrorist involved in the use, manufacture, and transport of explosives and firearms. So how many more of them are there that we don't know about? And then on Wednesday, the two leftards in the House voted against a bill to ban members of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad involved in the October 7th attacks from entering the United States. Stephanie, can you guess who the two are?
Well, I know one of them has got to be Talib.
Yes, Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib. They were the only two legislators to vote against the bill, which is called the No Immigration Benefits for Hamas Terrorists Act. But thankfully, it passed the House by a 422-2 vote. And Tlaib described the bill as, quote, another GOP messaging bill used to incite anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Muslim hatred that makes communities like ours unsafe, end quote. No, bitch, it's called trying to make America safe by prohibiting terrorists who raped women, mutilated children, and murdered 1,200 people in one day. Like, how is this woman even allowed to be in Congress at this point? I don't understand it.
No, it's absolutely disgusting. And isn't Cori Bush like in a bunch of trouble for paying her husband to be her quote unquote security guard or some bullshit like that? So it's like, give me a break. These people need to lose their job. In any real company, they would lose their job. But, you know, they can work in the American government. So that's great. You know, this episode has just got me thinking about how many people have senselessly died directly because of Joe Biden's actions or lack of action and leadership. So, like in terms of the border being open, due to Joe Biden, like we said, reversing all of Trump's border policies, the border was wide open. And so we had fentanyl pouring in, and fentanyl overdoses have skyrocketed. So, according to the CDC, fentanyl deaths increased by 279% from when Trump was in office in 2016 to now, or up to 2021. And deaths are totaling over 370,000 people. So to put that into perspective, less people in the US died of COVID. And like, look at all the drastic, unprecedented actions that they took for COVID. Yet, you know, the media barely even talks about fentanyl. And, you know, for the past 3 years, they've been saying that there's no problem. The border's closed. So it's just crazy. Then you have the endless Ukraine war that Biden has funded that has killed an entire generation of Ukrainian men to the point that they're now drafting men over the age of 40 because there's no younger men left. So it's like, that's a lot of people on his watch that have lost their lives. And now you have things escalating with Iran. And I mean, there's no telling what's to come with all of that. But the point is that his idiotic policies and weak leadership have very real and quantifiable consequences. And it's like death and destruction follow every single decision this man has made in his presidency. It's just like mind blowing when you really go back and look at everything. And here's a little fun fact to throw in at the end of the episode. 1 year after the East Palestine train derailment, Joe Biden is finally deciding to visit. And hey, I mean, he's only a year late, right?
Yeah, did you hear the ridiculous commentary from the administrator of the EPA when they were all celebrating Biden's amazing efforts with East Palestine? Because it made me want to vomit. So I'm going to tell you what he said. He said, quote, "For many, it's been a year of fear, a year of uncertainty, and a year of change. We recognize times have been very challenging. That's why I'm so thankful for the leadership of President Biden, who mobilized this whole of government response to support the people of East Palestine, Ohio, and supported the United States Environmental Protection Agency as we worked hard to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, clean up this mess, and restore this tight-knit community." End quote. Once again, I'm struggling to get through a quote without laughing about the ridiculousness of it, as if the Biden administration has any idea what the word accountability even means. And if I lived in East Palestine, I would fucking boycott his visit, which, by the way, there's no date set. It's just going to happen sometime this month, apparently. Sometime this month. But is it really? Because KJP had said he was going to visit East Palestine shortly after the train derailment, and that never happened. And then 7 months later, in September of last year, Biden was asked why he still hadn't gone to East Palestine, and his response was that he, quote, "hadn't been able to break," end quote. Because I guess that's what happens when you spend the majority of your term in office lounging on the beach on vacation, or getting doped up on adrenaline just long enough to make an appearance on stage where you ramble incoherently about nonsense and then can't figure out how to shuffle back behind the curtain without a handler guiding you where to go. He is quite literally the worst fucking president ever.
The worst, like the absolute worst. And it's really important that everyone starts to say that and get vocal about this because, for everyone's liberal friends, they need to like understand the price that's paid for having a weak president. And if enough people start speaking up and saying what's really on their mind, it could actually make a difference. And with this presidential election coming up, I think that our national security needs to be the number one priority on the top of everyone's minds. And that's the message that needs to be spread. Like, don't let the social issues that the left wants to discuss distract you from the real threats that we're facing that are far more important right now. So it's time to be outspoken. And, you could always share these episodes or TikTok posts to friends to like start the conversation or just get the word out because we can't be quiet anymore about this. Like, there's too much at stake. Look at how much this man has destroyed our country in one term. We cannot, sit by and like let him get in another term and just stay silent about it. We have to speak up. So I hope that everyone listening does that. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a great weekend and we'll see you back.